Hello, you're watching The Big Story, coming to you live from the Straits Times newsroom. I'm Olivia Quay.
I'm Harianto Diman. You can subscribe to the Straits Times channel so you never miss a single episode. 9 new COVID-19 cases were reported today, all imported.
They were placed on stay-home notices when they arrived in Singapore. More details will be shared later tonight. Well, my father received his first dose of Pfizer's COVID-19 vaccine today, and Jan, I understand that your mother is going to get hers in a couple of weeks, right?
In a couple of weeks, 2 weeks in fact. So she is really excited for that because she's finally eligible for it.
That's great. Well, the Health Ministry shared that as at March 15th, just 2 days ago, about 243,000 people have completed the full vaccination regimen.
Dr. Ruklanti Dialwis, a senior fellow from the Emerging Infectious Diseases Program at Duke NUS Medical School, joins us now. Doctor, what do you make of Singapore's vaccination progress so far? What does this figure show in terms of willingness to receive the jabs?
It is true the vaccination in Singapore is progressing a bit slower than other countries, like, for example, Israel. However, this is not a reflection of the willingness to receive a COVID-19 vaccine, but rather a sign of the organized manner in which Singapore is conducting their COVID-19 vaccination campaign. Currently, there is no detectable community transmission in Singapore, so we can systematically vaccinate the populations that are at risk. However, in the near future, as borders open up, travels resume, we need to ensure that the population is vaccinated. So those of you who do get offered a vaccine, but please do take it.
Right. Good point there, Doctor. So we also learned yesterday that 4 new vaccination centres will offer Moderna's vaccine, and that essentially gives the public a choice as to which shot they want, because, you know, if I want Moderna's vaccine, I can go to any of the 4 new vaccination centres, or if I want Pfizer's vaccines, I can go to, you know, the other few vaccination centres. So in the event that people, you know, they do favour one vaccine over the other, perhaps you can reiterate that, you know, Moderna and Pfizer's vaccines are indeed very similar.
Right. So the COVID-19 vaccines from Moderna and Pfizer are essentially very, very similar. So they're both using mRNA technology. They're both very similar in terms of safety profiles, and they both have over 90% protective efficacy. Therefore, if you were given an option to choose between Moderna and Pfizer COVID vaccine, I would just suggest to get whatever you are offered first, because they're essentially very similar vaccines.
Right. Doctor, I want to talk about the third vaccine that has arrived in Singapore. Now, in late February, Singapore received its first shipment of Sinovac's vaccine. Now, the Health Sciences Authority hasn't authorized for use here. But what's your opinion on the Sinovac vaccine?
So Sinovac vaccine is an inactivated virus vaccine. And the advantage of this vaccine is that it can be stored at 4 degrees. So for countries where the cold chain is very difficult, right, they don't have a lot of negative 80 freezers, they can use this. In terms of the efficacy, we're still getting data. And my assumption is that the HSA is also compiling this data and reviewing the safety and efficacy data for Sinovac. And that is why it hasn't been authorized yet.
I see. Well, Dr. Dialwis, thank you so much for coming on the show. We've been speaking to Dr. Ruklanti Dialwis from the Emerging Infectious Diseases Program at Duke NUS Medical School.
In the local headlines, Singapore will soon be able to freeze-dry COVID-19 PCR test kits locally with the technique used to preserve food. Local biotech firm Bioacumen Global said this removes the need for refrigeration currently required for these test kits. Freeze-dried kits can be kept at room temperature without any degradation. The company is currently developing its freeze-dried version of PCR kits, which are expected to be ready in around 2 months.
Dream Cruises will be launching a Hari Raya themed trip to celebrate the upcoming month of Ramadan. The cruises to nowhere aboard the World Dream cruise liner will have 2 sailings departing Singapore on May 16th and the 23rd. Guests can join communal prayer sessions and spiritual lectures as part of a Ramadan spiritual experience, the first itinerary of its kind on board a cruise. Pre-dawn meals will also be served, and these will be available before this special cruise from April 13th, the first day of Ramadan.
Meanwhile, an ITE student caught on video bullying a fellow student will be expelled. In a Facebook post, ITE said it's concluded its investigation and will dismiss the main aggressor. The video shows the main aggressor restraining a student in a men's toilet at ITE College Central, while at least 3 others look on, including a youth who appears to be blocking the exit. The main aggressor was also seen hitting, kicking and cussing the victim.
For the first time, Singapore made it into the list of the top 10 most attractive countries that employees would be willing to relocate to. We are at number 8. The same global talent report also found fewer Singaporeans, about 44%, are willing to work abroad, a sharp drop compared with 79% back in 2014. Australia remains the top destination where Singaporeans would like to work in, followed by China, Taiwan and New Zealand, which are all seen as role models in COVID-19 management.
A look at the global headlines. Thousands today fled an industrial suburb in Yangon after it was placed under martial law. More than 40 protesters were killed by security forces on Sunday and several factories were set ablaze.
Meanwhile, hundreds of mourners spilled onto the streets earlier today for the funeral of a 17-year-old medical student who was killed on Sunday, the bloodiest day so far in the weeks of protests. Emily with the reports.
A medical student who will now never graduate. The 17-year-old is the latest protester to lose his life in a brutal crackdown on anti-coup protesters in Myanmar. Friends and family sang revolutionary songs as they paid their final respects. Kyant Nya Hain lost his life on the outskirts of the capital Yangon on Sunday, now the bloodiest day of the protests since the February 1st military coup against elected leader Aung San Suu Kyi. Security forces shot dead at least 20 people on Monday, after 74 were killed a day earlier. Many in a Yangon suburb where Chinese-financed factories were torched. The Chinese embassy said many Chinese staff were injured and trapped in arson attacks by unidentified assailants, and called on Myanmar to protect Chinese property and citizens. China is viewed as being supportive of the military junta that has taken power. Now, some of those that don't support the military government and its increasingly brutal crackdown are fleeing into neighbouring India. Among them is Cho, a fireman who said he and 20 others joined the protesters after refusing police orders.
On February 18th, we received an order from the military that the fire truck, which is red in color, had to be painted white, which is the color of the police. The fire truck was going to be used for dispersing crowds. On that particular day, on February 18th, I was the commander, and I went to disperse the crowd, but I didn't fulfill my orders. We didn't want to be under the control of the military, so we joined the civil disobedience movement.
He's now in India's Mizoram state, where Reuters has also spoken to police defectors who say they refused to shoot civilians. A spokesman for the junta could not be reached for comment. According to an Indian police officer in Mizoram, more than 400 people from Myanmar, many of them policemen, have fled there since late February. India's federal government has ordered local authorities to stop the influx.
Traveling to China from selected countries will be possible if you've taken Chinese-made COVID-19 vaccines. Chinese embassies in the Philippines, Indonesia, the US, Pakistan, Sri Lanka and Italy have issued notices saying China will open visa applications for those who have had the China-made jabs at least 14 days before applying for a visa. From this week, this will apply to those visiting the Chinese mainland for work resumption, business or for humanitarian needs, like reuniting with their family. Those arriving in China still face a quarantine of up to 3 weeks.
Elsewhere, the Philippines is barring the entry of foreigners and some returning citizens who have been abroad for reasons other than work. This will be for 1 month from this Saturday, March 20th. But among those exempted are accredited officials of foreign governments, returning Filipino workers and emergency cases.
8 people were fatally shot at 3 Atlanta massage parlors. 2 of the victims were Caucasian, but 6 were Asians, raising fears that the crimes may have targeted people of Asian descent. The identified suspect is Robert Aaron Long, a 21-year-old white man. He was brought into custody by the police after a manhunt. Long's motive was unclear, although the Atlanta police initially said the shooting at one of the parlors as a robbery in progress.
You would have read her stories or even watched her interviews with us on The Big Story.
That's right. I'm talking about the Straits Times' Science and Environment correspondent Audrey Tan, who was named Journalist of the Year earlier today in SPH's News Awards. Now, the award ceremony celebrates the best of journalism across all of SPH's publications, including the Straits Times, the Business Times, Berita Harian and Tamil Murasu.
And we have Audrey joining us now to share more on her win. Audrey, congratulations to you. How do you get your stories and your scoops, especially, particularly last year, when COVID-19 restrictions were tighter?
So yeah, hi guys, and thank you for your congratulations. Yeah, so last year was quite different for me. I mean, compared to the other 7 years or so that I've been at ST. And mainly, not only is it because of the pandemic, it was also because I was thrust into COVID-19 science reporting. So previously, I reported mainly on environmental science. And in this time around, I would have to switch tracks to focus on virology and how that would impact human health. So that was a key obstacle or challenge for me during that period, which I tried to overcome by getting in touch with scientists who thankfully were very patient in explaining to me the science of it, and also to help in my understanding of COVID-19 science. I also did a Coursera course on genomics and evolution. So that helped in my understanding of viruses and all that. So I guess a lot of the stories that I did last year had to rely on emails, getting experts to be able to respond, trawling through social media platforms like Twitter, where scientists often share their papers, and then trying to find stories that would be relevant to our Singapore audience from there. And on top of that, because mainly I was reporting on environmental issues before the pandemic, so I also had to stay abreast with the information on the climate change front. Did that through social media, and also because I've established contacts in this field for a couple of years now, sometimes people alert me to things as well.
Right. And out of all the pieces that you've written last year, Audrey, which were you proudest of and why?
So some of the more memorable pieces I did last year on COVID-19 science were not just solely about text. It was also collaborations with the other parts of the newsroom, such as the art desk, for instance. I remember one particular piece, we did a kind of like a cartoon thing on the COVID-19 lexicon, COVID tunes, where I worked with an artist hub to come up with cartoons that kind of exemplify the kind of new normal that we were facing, introducing new scientific terms to the audience like PCR, R0, and other kinds of scientific terms, vaccines and all that. So that was one particularly memorable piece. Another one I think was when I wrote about how Moderna was going to introduce or was seeking HSA approval to sell their vaccines here. And that was pretty exciting because it was before any vaccine had been approved for use worldwide. and Moderna was one of the front runners. So we did an interview with the Moderna CEO who shared with us that he was actually seeking HSA approval to market their vaccines here. So that was exciting because, you can see the light at the end of the tunnel, and here we are today.
All right.
I do remember the two pieces that Audrey was talking about just now.
Yeah?
Yeah, so definitely memorable for us as well.
That's right. Well, thank you, Audrey, for coming onto the show, and congratulations once again. That was SPH's Journalist of the Year for 2020, Science and Environment correspondent Audrey Tan.
Well, for more news and videos, visit straitstimes.com and subscribe to our YouTube channel by hitting the red button below.
Once again, I'm Haryanto Diman with Olivia Quay. Join us tomorrow for more stories on The Big Story.